This is your explicit content warning for bodily harm done onto a child. So if you are squeamish for that further content, then please wait till next episode or be prepared. Thank you.
Today we're stepping into one of Wisconsin's most disturbing chapters, one where the threat didn't come from a drifter or a hardened criminal, but from a boy who should have still been worrying about homework and curfews. At just 17, he moved through this small town like any other teenager until the truth surfaced. Behind closed doors, he was building a world of control, cruelty, and fear, targeting children younger than himself, trapping them in a nightmare no one imagined a local kid could create. This is a story of how a teenager became the center of a case so chilling it still lingers in Baraboo's memory, and how a community learned that sometimes the darkest danger comes from someone who looks far too young to be capable of such harm.
But before we dig into this story, we would like to say that we love the unexplained, possibly paranormal, and extraordinarily strange. And if you do as well, we would love for you to give us a like, follow, or subscribe so more people like you can find us. Now, let's get into it.
On the morning of July 10th, 1994, authorities waded into the Wisconsin River and spotted a motionless form draped over a half-submerged tree branch. The dawn light revealed the pale outline of a boy, limbs splayed as if frozen in mid-gesture. Water lapped softly against bark and clothing, carrying away any final echo of a struggle. An autopsy would later confirm that he had drowned accidentally, and investigators found no outward signs of foul play. The boy was 14-year-old Chris Steiner, a Baraboo native whose face now stared up from state reports and newspaper headlines. Just 6 days earlier, on July 4th, his parents awoke to an empty bed and a house that felt impossibly still. They searched every room, called his name into silent hallways, and finally alerted police to his disappearance. Early on, detectives theorized that Chris had slipped away to join holiday revelers. After all, fireworks still echoed in every Wisconsin backyard that Independence Day. But as they combed his bedroom, a darker truth began to emerge. The screen door covering his window had been neatly sliced open from the outside, a precise incision that no curious teenager would bother to make.
He had a screen door on his window?
Maybe just a screen. Muddy shoe prints trailed across the carpet toward the hallway, each print a muted testament to unseen footsteps. No party invitations, no hastily abandoned backpacks, only the silent riddle of those tracks leading ever forward into an unanswered question. In the end, the coroner's verdict stood: accidental drowning. Yet the scarred screen and muddied carpet remained, haunting reminders that Chris Steiner had not chosen to walk away. Kathy and George Steiner refused to accept the verdict.
Verdict. That's a southern.
I don't know what that is.
That verdict.
They refused to accept the verdict of accidental drowning. Their son had. I feel like we're having too much fun about this. This is a sad thing. We need to be
Yeah, right.
solemn.
Somber.
Yeah. Walk it off. Their son had never shown any interest in.
Walk it off. All I could think was Anchorman. Walk it off. It's not like you've never seen a boner before.
Oh my gosh. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Their son had never shown any interest in swimming, let alone slipped out of his bedroom in the dead of night. Nothing about the coroner's report matched Chris Steiner's cautious nature or his quiet habits. And yet, without hard evidence of foul play, the file went cold. The kid sounds like he's just kind of sticks to himself. He's quiet, does his schoolwork, does his chores, follows the rules. So they just... That's what I don't get. When stuff like this happens. Kid. Yeah, it's crazy whenever stuff like this happens. Like, say there's like a kid that just goes missing, and the cops are like, "Oh, they ran away. It's common for their age." But like, this is a kid that, like, no, this is
Right, yeah.
completely out of character.
Mm,
Maybe it is common for their age. I will admit that's true.
well,
But you
yeah,
know,
I mean, there are times when the quiet kid is the one that, you kinda wanna know a bit more about because
mm-hmm.
you don't know what they're hiding.
Oh, for
But
sure.
if he's, like, doing his homework, if he's, like, following the rules, if he's, listening to his parents, then
Mm-hmm.
with no sort of rebellious act at all, then yeah, it's kinda
Mm.
like he's just a kid living his life.
I can't imagine the grief these parents are going through. Knowing that this is just not their kid. Something
Right.
happened, and that
Yeah.
something, that someone that caused it, is still out there. So, driven by disbelief, the Steiners called the sheriff's office again and again. They presented timelines, shell fragments of questions, and maps of the riverbank where Chris was found. Each visit yielded the same response: no new leads, no suspects, no reopening of the case. The walls of the police station felt colder every time they left. Grief turned into frustration, then to determination. If the authorities would not chase answers, Kathy and George would. They cleared a corner of their dining room table, stacked witness statements and police summaries into neat piles, and began to build a timeline of Chris's final day. Their inquiries led them to the schoolyard, where Chris had been last seen laughing with friends. They traced his steps through empty hallways, quiet locker rooms, and the overgrown path to the football field. In hushed voices, classmates recalled seeing Chris near Joe Clark, a 17-year-old known for dark humor and sudden bursts of anger. Geez, that sounds like me.
Well, the dark humor for sure, the sudden bursts of anger, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I don't do that too much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that doesn't sound like you.
As the Steiners collected statements, Joe Clark's name kept surfacing. They noted rumors of shadowy confrontations, a shove in a hallway, a dare shouted under flickering streetlights. Yet every lead ended in whispers. No witnesses willing to talk on the record. No physical proof tying Clark to Chris's disappearance. Despite mounting suspicion, Kathy and George could document only conjecture. No fingerprints on Chris's jacket, no witnesses to an altercation by the riverbank, no CCTV catching those final steps. The lack of concrete evidence forced the authorities to seal the case once more. In the hush of their home, the Steiners left a single lamp burning over their stacks of notes, maps, and unanswered questions. They played recordings of interviews late into the night, straining for a clue hidden in the static. Though the official case remains closed, Kathy and George continue to chase shadows, unable to rest until someone explains how a careful boy like Chris ended up in the dark current of the river and why the surface finally gave way.
Thad Phillips drifted into an uneasy sleep on the living room sofa one humid July night in 1995. The TV's glow had lulled him into drowsiness, its static hum blending with the cicada's distant chorus outside. He slipped beneath a thin blanket, unaware that the night was far from over. A sudden shift in weight jolted him awake. He felt the sofa vanish beneath him, replaced by the cold press of another body lifting and carrying him as if he were weightless. Disorientated, Thad squinted against the darkness, convinced his father or mother had come to tuck him in. But instead of his quiet hallway and familiar bedroom door, he was enveloped by a dense, moist air that smelled faintly of gasoline and mildew. Through blurry vision, he made out a tall figure walking before him, its identity obscured by shadow. When he mumbled, "Where's my car?" the figure paused. "I parked it just up the road," came a low reply, voice edged with something older than youth. Thad's heart thundered as he attempted to sit up, only to find his arms pinned by the stranger's firm grip. Fear prickled down his spine, yet he followed when the man beckoned. They threaded through unlit streets where street lamps flickered out one by one. Each step echoed on cracked pavement as Thad's mind raced, searching for familiarity. The stranger ran ahead without looking back, urging him onward with a harsh whisper. After what felt like an interminable trek, they halted before a house that time seemed to have forgotten. Its paint bubbled in mottled patches, windows boarded unevenly, and an overgrown yard swallowed the path. Rusted hinges groaned as the stranger pushed open the sagging front door. Thad's skin crawled at the sight inside. Heaps of dirty dishes crusted with mold, rotting leftovers, congealing in dark corners, and towering stacks of unrecognizable refuse. A single bare bulb overhead swung gently, casting distorted shadows that danced across cluttered rooms. I live here with my brother, the stranger said, his tone eerily calm. We're throwing a party for the whole neighborhood. His words drifted against the stench, hollow and unsettling. A cold knot formed in Thad's gut as the stranger turned toward a narrow hallway. Want to see my model cars? He asked. There was something in his voice, an unnatural hush that made Thad's pulse spike with dread. Sure, Thad managed, though every instinct screamed to run. The stranger stepped aside, revealing a partially ajar bedroom door. Beyond it, the dim glow of another swinging bulb revealed a carpet strewn with more debris, and on a rickety shelf, the outline of tiny cars glinted in the gloom. Name's Joe, the stranger said, with a crooked grin that didn't reach his eyes. Thad paused at the threshold, torn between curiosity and sheer terror, as the darkness inside swallowed him whole. Thad's legs trembled as he followed Joe up the narrow staircase. The single bare bulb overhead cast warped shadows on peeling walls, and a damp, stale odor clung to the air. In Joe's cramped bedroom, rows of dusty model cars gleamed under the weak light, an incongruous, almost comforting sight. Thad stared at the tiny vehicles, trying to steady his racing pulse, unaware of the danger lurking behind Joe's silent gaze. Without warning, Joe spun and shoved Thad onto a stained mattress that sagged under his weight. Thad's back hit the soiled springs with a wet thud, and Joe lunged over him, pinning his arms to the thin fabric. Panic surged as Thad kicked and twisted, but Joe's grip was relentless. With one brutal twist of Thad's ankle, a sickening crack pierced the hush. Pain and adrenaline fused into a single white-hot rush. Thad wrenched free, half crawling toward the stairs as the snapped bone ground against his leg. He cried out, each step punctuated by searing agony, but Joe's heavy footsteps thundered behind him, and in a swift motion, he clamped Thad in a chokehold before slamming him onto the sagging sofa below. Thad's breaths came in ragged gasps, sweat mixing with blood from his ankle. He clawed at Joe's arms, voice trembling as he begged for mercy. He promised to lie, claiming he'd tripped over the coffee table. If only Joe would let him go. Joe's expression remained unreadable, not a flicker of compassion crossed his face. Desperate, Thad stammered one simple question. Why? Joe leaned close, his voice a cold whisper in the dim room. Because I like the sound, he said, and I like the feel. A final crack echoed in the darkness as Thad's world narrowed to a single agonized scream.
Joe forced 13-year-old Thad onto a bed, bent his leg until the femur snapped, and applied makeshift casts of socks and ace bandages before stepping out of the house. Thad crawled downstairs into the kitchen, only to have Joe return with the young woman and carry on as if nothing were amiss, unaware that Thad lay broken and silent in the next room. Back upstairs, Joe resumed the torture. Between each crushing strike, he would tighten bandages, fashion braces from scrap materials, and speak to Thad as though they were old friends watching television. When Thad begged to call his parents, Joe handed over the phone, but it was switched off the moment Thad dialed. At dawn, Thad's parents, new to the neighborhood and knowing he had no local friends, circled the streets and a nearby fair, tormented by the belief their son might return on his own. They didn't know that Thad was barricaded half a mile away, trapped under the same brutality they feared.
One morning, Joe's car didn't start. He went back upstairs to Thad. In a single rage-fueled motion, he shattered the boy's kneecaps and crushed his ribs, leaving Thad gasping beneath the weight of each new fracture. On July 30th, several days into his captivity, Joe prepared to leave again. To prevent another escape, he locked 13-year-old Thad in a small bedroom closet. The air was stale, the walls close. Darkness pressed in around the boy, and Joe slipped out and shut the door. Within the suffocating blackness, Thad's trembling hands found an old acoustic guitar. He swung it against the door's frame, each strike ringing hollow in the empty hallway. Splinters flew as the latch finally gave way. The scent of stale sweat hit him as he staggered into the room. A swollen and shattered body, Thad dragged himself down the hall, the weight of each step agony. He collapsed twice before reaching the kitchen and clung to the dangling telephone cord until he pulled the receiver free. Fingers numb with pain, he dialed 911. His whispered pleas for help echoed in the silent house. Outside, sirens began to wail. Officers arrived within minutes, guided by Thad's precise directions and by their own knowledge of Joe's address. They found Thad unconscious on the linoleum floor, his legs twisted, his breath shallow. The boy's body bore the marks of 43 hours of brutality. Rescue had come too late for his innocence, but not for his life.
That's just insane. How old was he? 13?
13?
13, and endure that. That kid's been in places in his mind that most 13-year-olds don't have to go.
That kid has made places in his mind where most
Right.
13-year-olds haven't made.
Yeah. That's crazy. At the hospital, doctors delivered a grim prognosis. Multiple breaks in both legs, kneecaps driven behind the joints, ribs
Jesus.
fractured. I know. Skin stretched and torn like a crash victim's. They said he had only hours to live before internal bleeding claimed him. But against every expectation, Thad clung to consciousness. His survival would become proof of a resilience forged in horror. As Thad lay tethered to hospital machines, Joe Clark was cuffed at a backyard party. When officers told him why, he blinked and asked, "Oh, he's still alive?" The question hung in the night air like a bad joke.
Jesus Christ.
In the squad car, Clark denied any role in Thad's mangled body, but
Wait, what?
yeah. He blamed blackouts and fainting spells, fragments of memory he claimed he could never trust. At the station, he shrugged off the evidence. "I didn't hurt him," he insisted, voice flat. "I just wanted to hang out." The words echoed empty in the sterile cell. This dude is
with
some
a
kind of
13-year-old.
psychotic person. Yeah. Well, it takes me back to where, while he's doing this shit to this kid, he's talking to him like they're just hanging out watching SpongeBob or something.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Just, I don't know. Kid's messed up. During Thad's captivity, Joe confided in him that he'd already murdered 2 boys in the same way. He could recall only one name, Chris Steiner. With that single clue, authorities gained permission to exhume Steiner's grave and search for similar injuries. Under the flickering morgue lights, radiographs revealed shattered femurs nearly identical to Thad's, confirming the pattern that had gone unseen when the body was first recovered. Now, why was this not looked at during... I don't get it.
I like that our minds went the same place. How did that get missed? Like,
right? In the autopsy?
When they're doing an autopsy, how did those injuries get completely looked over?
I mean, it sounds, from the way that Thad's injuries sound. I mean, you and I both watch Stranger Things, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever Vecna's doing his thing with the victims and their limbs are getting broken and twisted.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get that picture when I think of these injuries done to Thad.
Sure.
I know it's a very dramatic depiction. but it sounds pretty dramatic what was done to him.
I mean, when it comes to like Vecna, I mean it's instantaneous. What Joe here is doing, he's doing over a span of time,
Right.
right? So things are getting more damaged, more twisted every single time.
And swollen. I mean,
Yeah.
so how do you miss that? How do you miss that in an autopsy? If his injuries were similar to, I don't know.
I mean these kinds of injuries to the joints and the bones and stuff like that, they're gonna be consistently swollen. So
Uh-huh.
there's gonna be signs of these broken and breaks and fractures. So how did it get overlooked? That makes no sense.
Mm-mm.
Unless they just didn't care enough. That like because like they kept pushing off the parents every time the parents came in. They kept pushing the parents off. They're
They
like,
didn't have a
it's not
suspect.
done.
They didn't have a
That
suspect.
well, they
So
didn't want to look for one.
it didn't sound like it. No. That's
Surprise,
crazy.
surprise. Anyway, it is now believed Joe abducted Steiner, broke his legs, and tossed the bleeding boy into a river, leaving him to drown. A subsequent search of Joe's home turned up a tattered list titled "Get to Now," a misspelling suggesting no, Know, and another labeled The Leg Thing. Beneath each heading lay names of young boys, an anonymous roster of potential victims waiting to be fulfilled. Joe Clark faced a litany of charges: attempted first degree murder, child battery, intent to disfigure or disable, causing mental harm to a child, and child enticement. He entered a no contest plea, claiming complete amnesia about abducting or torturing Thad Phillips. The judge sentenced him to 100 years behind bars, a lifetime for a lifetime stolen. That dude just needs to be.
Mm-mm.
There's
Mm-mm.
some
Wild
people.
West justice.
Yeah, yeah.
Line him up.
I'll bury him up to his neck. Pour some honey on there. Oh.
Mm.
Though a court awarded Phillips a $21 million settlement, not one penny has reached him. A GoFundMe now stands between him and the crippling medical bills his injuries demand. With new evidence, Joe Clark was tried for the murder of Chris Steiner. His defense claimed prenatal drug exposure and a bicycle crash months earlier had impaired him.
Uh-huh.
His mother swore he could have His mother swore he couldn't have slipped out. He'd have to pass her bedroom door and she would have heard him. Investigators proved she was a heavy sleeper and that Joe had repeatedly sneaked out as a teen. Her alibi collapsed, leaving Clark unable to deny his presence at Steiner's disappearance.
So when I came across that information, I kind of wondered if like the house that he took the boys to wasn't like necessarily had to not be the house that he actually lived with his mom. That this was just an empty house
Yeah,
that he used,
the way it was described sounds like a completely abandoned house.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like the boarded up windows, the very
Yeah.
poorly maintained everything.
Right. Even though Joe had been charged in connection with Thad Phillips, Thad was asked to testify against Joe for the murder of Chris Steiner. Tragically, Thad was shot in the back by 15-year-old Michael Huebsch. I'm not sure how to say that. Huebsh. Um, Shortly before the trial began, it was believed that Michael was friends with Joe and had shot him out of revenge for testifying against him. However, Thad Phillips survived. After several days in the hospital, Thad was able to testify in Clark's murder trial, where he was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 60 years. To this day, Joe Clark still denies any involvement in the murder of Chris Steiner.
What the fuck, dude?
Yeah. Yeah. This guy is a mental case.
He's a real piece of work, yeah.
Yeah. Just completely disconnected from what he's doing to the victim. No remorse whatsoever. That's I believe that's a sociopath.
That sounds about right.
I mean, yeah, I took psychology in college. I didn't end up being a therapist like I planned, but I'm pretty sure that that is as a sociopath. From what I remember, it's been a long time since I went to college, but yeah,
Yeah, I just amazing. Just the fucking. I'm so glad Thad survived that. Like
I
the shot,
know.
getting shot in the back. At first, I thought, oh, he was shot in the back. Now he survived all that for fucking nothing, basically. You know, a
And he
13-year
survived
old
again.
surviving all of that, getting shot in the back before he even gets justice. You know, and then, but yeah,
Yeah,
no, he
no, he's still
survived.
alive and he still hasn't received a dime. There is still a GoFundMe set up for him.
I was
I
gonna say, is the GoFundMe actually getting some
I
traction?
am not sure. I actually just came across something of his like 2 days ago. Thaddeus Phillips. Um, I do believe he still has a GoFundMe. Let me see. GoFundMe.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah. Does it have
It says it's 25. Whoops. There's 25,805 raised of 100K.
hmm,
And it's still taking donations. He's 26% there.
you know what? I think we'll put this on the website. A
I
link
think
to his
that's, yeah.
GoFundMe.
People are still donating 11 days ago, 1 day ago, 1 month ago. Everybody's still donating money. So,
Yeah. I mean, he was completely brutalized. I can't imagine the pain he still endures from those injuries. Um, I mean, even if you just look in terms of arthritis,
right. You
you
know,
know.
it's crazy to me because if Thad, or not Thad, but if Joe is in prison and he's just doing time, he's not getting a death sentence. If he's just doing time, they have him doing work in there, right? That's usually how prisons work. They have some sort of, work program. How is none of that money there just being allocated to Thad at all?
Um,
Is
I
that just
don't
like my
know.
misrepresentation of how it works? Is that not how it actually works? I don't know. But like that's how I feel like it should be like worked. Like they should be having him doing work that is putting money towards Thad. Like where are they supposed, I don't know. I don't know. That's just my
Should. Yeah. Geez, Joe is 47 or 48 today. Um, he, when did this happen? I don't remember. But, well, he was 17 when this happened. That's a lot of time that he could be producing some
yeah,
sort of monetary compensation.
right, exactly. And he's gonna be in there basically for the rest of his life, you know?
Yeah.
So
I don't
I don't
know.
know.
You know, bad things happen to people in prison. I'm surprised something bad didn't happen to them.
So yeah. No, well, nobody said that it hasn't been, nothing bad has happened to him, but
Not that bad though.
true.
um,
I don't
not
know how it works in Wisconsin. Maybe they don't have the work programs that some prisons do, but
that I don't know. I do
uh,
wonder if he really actually did murder somebody else though, because
like,
Chris Steiner is the only other one known of before Thaddeus. Um,
oh, because he said like there's two other people, right? So
yeah,
so it's Chris and Thad and a third person.
right. Maybe he was just trying to scare him.
I I think because of like that sociopath attitude that you were bringing up, maybe that he was just saying it to be like, oh yeah, there was a third one, like trying to brag, like
Yeah, brag.
bragging
He's
rights.
bigger
Yeah,
than he really is. Not that that makes you big, but
right. Yeah,
to that kind of person, maybe it does.
yeah. No, they want that fame. They want that idea that they're gonna make the headlines, sort of deal.
Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah, we'll put the link on the website. and
Now we'll have it
maybe
in the episode description below too. So
yeah, maybe some good will come out of it, and he can get more donations. I hope. Anyway,
yep. Yeah. So if you want to at least go take a look, maybe share it. If you can't, you can't. If you can, you can. How do you want to end this?
I don't know. I'm sitting here staring at my mic, thinking, what now?
Well, thank you for listening to Shifting Veils. I appreciate you guys. Much
Bye.
love. Deuces.